Answer to an invitation on a question that I received. I'm in a house in France, and there's some beings on this land who speak French who are singing, and kind of just take that as that's the fish tank making white noise, and that this is where the focus is. So bringing it back to that voice. Okay, so a projector-generator relationship. You find out this information and you ask the question, because how can these two types of energies be in relationship together? And actually, I think it's one of the most important questions that someone could possibly want to know about. Why? Because that's the role of the projector, is to empower the generator. So let's just start from there. However, I do also want to caveat this video by saying that my partner and I do separate work with intimacy and embodiment practices, which I can share about later, and we're doing that here on the land in France. So that's kind of another container in my life. It's not separate from the work I do in human design and readings, but the things we talk about, it's just a different vocabulary, put it that way. So there's vocabulary for the embodiment practice we do, and then there's a vocabulary for human design. And I use these videos to talk about that vocabulary, basically. The second thing I'll say is I don't know a ton about it because I haven't had a lot of experience reading composite charts. I'd like more. And I know how valuable that could be to have a composite chart. I know the composite chart of my partner and I regularly reference this chart. But I do think from my investigation that it's really important for the projector to get first clear on his or her own chart, especially if you're a single definition, because then instead of the inquiry that that Socrates used and that most practices of inquiry use, which is know thyself. This is also Ramana Maharshi used this, know thyself, who am I? The projector is actually asked, and this is in the text of Ra, who is the source of this knowledge, that you should be asking, who are you? Okay, so instead of this inquiry, I'll go back to what I was just saying, instead of the inquiry of who are you, you're asked, who am I? Sorry, let's get this straight. Who am I? Okay, and to think and ponder that, you're actually asking, who are you, to the other. And by asking that, you're actually going to get a deeper understanding of yourself. So this is the paradox, and again, I would like more time and space to read about it and to really get a depth understanding. But from what I have read up to this point, it's most important for the projector to get really clear on his or her design, and then things will unfold more, because our type is really here to serve the other. And I could do a whole nother video session on this about the foundation of democracy and the evolution since 1781, really, and why this is so important for the collective. But we'll stick for now with the kind of vocabulary we're at, which is that projectors are here to really serve the other by knowing themselves. Let's move on to what I can tell you about what I know, because based on my readings of these texts. So the first one, it's kind of a surprise to me, that Ross said that projectors have greater levels of intimacy, and that it's really hard for, so let me go back to that. And projectors have greater levels of intimacy together. Not necessarily as romantic partners, but the direct line is clearer because they don't have the defined sacral. So I can say that I did have an experience of this recently, and I think it's really curious. I'm not sure if it's true. I'm finding in my life, when I think about it, that I really would like more awakened relationships with people who know that they have this type, so I can explore it more. The thing is, I think like this kind of relationship, people wouldn't get much done necessarily in it because they don't have that defined sacral, that life force energy. So yeah, I'm not really sure too much about it beyond that. However, the projector-generator relationship is saying that you're here to guide. So if you're in this type of relationship, it's actually the perfect experience, and it's a full-time job. Yeah, it's a full-time. It will be your work to bring this into an exalted state. So how do you do this? You learn to guide them through the deconditioned sacral, like knowing sacral sounds that aren't you, okay? And to ask them frequently about their sacral. Do you want this or that? And then they'll give you the or response. Yeah, like we don't really, you'll start to notice about yourself if you have an undefined sacral that you don't have this response. You have it, but it's not you. It's just your mind making it up. So ask the other, if the other happens to be a generator, which is a very high probability that they do and that they have this defined sacral. The other thing that's given as advice, and I don't necessarily advise it, and long story on this, is the sleeping separately. I would say experiment with it and try it. The end. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The advice, or not the advice, but really the truth download that Ra gives about this is like remarkable, because you learn that sleeping together has nothing to do with intimacy, and relationships are way more than that. However, it's not necessarily everyone's privilege. I disagree with him in that regard, because he says, well, we live in this era where we have more space and we can do this. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. It hasn't really been my experience in the apartment I live in. But, again, long story on it. I won't say too much, but experiment with it. And if it works, it might actually benefit your relations and exalt your relationships. And then the last thing I'd say about that, well, maybe I have, let's see, 2 more little points about projector-generator relationships, is to reflect on their frustration using I statements, so using a lot of nonviolent communication to help him or her process what they haven't processed yet. They have a sacral or an emotional wave. And that gets a little complicated. In my case, my partner has an emotional wave. Projectors can also have an emotional wave as their authority. But if you can use an I statement to help them process that, it can be really helpful. So it will take time. And for them to process it, because they can't actually process anything in the now. It's impossible to process the now through this emotional center. So kind of like, if you're going to have a talk, you don't say you did this. You say, I am having this experience. This is like a basic kind of 101 from nonviolent communication, if you're familiar with it. But that's sort of the way to feel their frustration, because when you start to feel frustration, it's not you, it's actually the other person. When you start to feel that, like, especially if you've had a meal and you're like, that wasn't fulfilling, this is for projectors only, like, that's not you, that's somebody else's feeling. So notice it and bring it to awareness. This is all about awareness. So bring it to the awareness And then that person's going to understand more about themselves. This I can almost guarantee will happen and begin to happen in groups and partnerships, because you are so sensitive in that sacral place. You are so open in that sacral place. So use that to your advantage in leadership position, as every single projector is since 1781 in a leadership position. Whether you're in front of a room or sitting, being a Buddha under a tree, you have this responsibility. So bring it to their awareness. I see that you're feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling frustrated, and here's why. And would you be willing to do this? It's something along those lines. You're not assigning any blame. You're just noticing the frustration as an emotion that's coming up. So ask a lot of questions because you're here to guide. And I have a wanting perspective, so I know without the sacral, I can see what people are wanting in terms of money, food, sex, power. That's all the sacral center. And guess what they're wanting? They're wanting more food. They're wanting more sex. They're wanting more power, or better food, better sex, better power. I mean, that's just everywhere. And we're really terrified of these things, right? And we're either always complaining about it. The collective, I'm speaking through a collective channel, reading the news, reading the comment section, reading someone's Facebook page, whatever. It's always coming from, what my perspective is looking at. What are people wanting? So they're terrified to acknowledge that that's what they're wanting. And actually, I'm here to kind of green light or bring awareness to that might be okay, actually. Okay, that might be okay to want more or better of those things, and that a lot of it is that we're shamed into convincing ourselves that that's bad or wrong. And this kind of is what forms negative mental formations, like that person has too much power, or they don't deserve that much power, or I should be the one who has those things. And if you can't look at the world, if you start to look at this world from this perspective, let me say, if you're looking out, reading the news, the way that things are so chaotic and incoherent, this is like 1% of people who have all of these resources, right? And the rest of us are kind of walking around going like, well, why does he have that? And honestly, they have this pretty much the same amount as you. If you're not, in that very, very tiny sliver of people, there's a good chance that it's not worth it to compete with that person or be jealous of that person. And I hope that kind of makes sense, because it does happen, and it's okay when it happens, and you can notice it. And I definitely notice it in myself, man, I can't write like that guy. Or that girl. A lot of times it's a guy who's really writing something well, and I can look into my subconscious more and say that there's really not a competition kind of thing there that's going to secure me more resources. It's more just, how can I make this better, more good, more true, more beautiful, in order for all of us to feel more of a sense of that deep satisfaction. Because the deep subconscious in the not self is that no one feels satisfied. None of those generators feel satisfied, right? Actually, projector, let me put it this way. Without that undefined sacral, in your very inner child, innocent state, the way you were when you were 5, 7 years old, you didn't care about any of those things. And to be honest, you still don't. Okay? If you really, really go into the state of your true self, you don't at all. And you don't even need them. to be here. So it's kind of funny that you can develop a really, really strong awareness of the sacral center and use this, to your advantage, and not to your advantage individually, but to the advantage of people. Okay, even if you don't care about other people at all, and you say, whatever, be deeply selfish. And actually, by being deeply selfish, other people are going to benefit. So it kind of works out. But the reality is no one feels satisfied. I mean, this is like the biggest pain and suffering on the planet right now. I think it's like 86% of people are generators or something like that. So there's just the deep, deep sense of dissatisfaction. And I see it as our job as projectors to understand the others, understand the cravings as ourselves, and see that desire is actually what drives reality. Okay? So if the generator, if he or she can't follow their inner authority, sacral or emotional, they can't follow their inner authority, and or they're blocked from that. A lot of people are blocked from connecting to their sacral or emotional. And this is, this is outside of HD vocabulary, just like general lack of embodiment in our population, because we've so easily codified our sense of self to the head, to the mind, that they can't even tune into their inner authority. So what happens? Nothing good gets done. Nothing good gets done. No one can tune into their sacral response. No one can tune into their emotional. Okay, so projector, this is your job, to guide them to get into their authority. And then once they're in their authority, once they're in their sacral response, or in their emotional wave and noticing it, then your guidance, you're going to feel recognition. See, it's really nice. It's a really nice combination once you get the kind of formula established. Yeah, so the so what happens to you, okay, when the generator isn't operating correctly, is that you feel bitter because they're not giving you any invitations. No one has time. You get steamrolled. No one has time. Nobody has time to read your messages, your watch your videos, whatever. They're, the universe. What I wrote here is the universe is constipated. Okay, so after listening and you anyway, I'm sort of going off my notes now, but I think that's the thing with the invitations that everyone gets hung up on, is no one's giving me an invitation. Well, it's a contradiction because the projectors aren't guiding the generators to give the projectors the correct invitation. So now we're all backed up and constipated, and we're not able to invite each other. So anyway, if you're listening to this and you're a generator, you can invite me, and you don't need it, but it could help, right? So I'd love to talk about motivation more, but just to say, this is kind of deeply personal to share, and that I don't really know a whole lot about it, other than this little tidbit I can share of personal experience. In the long term, it's better to work one-on-one with each other, because that way we can learn how to decondition our sacral and learn and really work with motivation as well, which is kind of to do with attachment a bit, I'm noticing. So if you have this incorrect relationship, I mean, it's not incorrect or correct, but I mean, the way that you eat, let me just put it this way, the way that you eat, the way that you have sex, the way that you buy things, Okay? It's not you. It's literally all of the conditioning of the environment and the people around you. Okay? So just let it go. Or like, know when enough is enough. That's, well, let it go for your spleen and know when enough is enough. And, you know, you'll be a lot more at peace, at ease. And again, our signature, which is success and recognition. And all it is bringing awareness to that. It's not saying, you know, because it's never going to end. The suffer. You're never going to get out of like having to eat food, having to have sex, having to make money. Like that's the brilliant part of this reality that we get to live in, because desire is what's driving evolution, right? But our role is actually just to guide people into like the more higher values of how to do that. And it's that simple. So, yeah, let's pause there. And if anyone has any questions, if you've watched this video and you're a projector and you're in a relationship with a generator, or you don't even know, you're going to be in a relationship with a generator. I guarantee it. You were born into this world to be, you know, work or family or wherever you are. Obviously, that's going on. But I mean, if you're in an intimate relationship, especially, and you have a question, I would be really happy to talk about it, because I do have experience working with the composite chart, and I know kind of, I hate to use tips and tricks, but I know the green lights, kind of the green light, red lights even, of where our boundaries can be broken and be established, and where our deeper understandings and, like I said, exalted experience of each other can happen as well. And that's, you know, something we can only do when we're really in service to ourselves and we're really selfish about this experiment. You thought I was going to say the other person, but it's really an extremely selfish experience, because you got to really know yourself, because your inquiry is, who are you? Okay. Yeah. So that will lead to the fulfillment of exalted projector-generator relationships. Yeah. And create more beauty. So back to the source.